Let's start with a reality check. India is now the world's largest country by population and ranks among the top 5 economies globally. But when we look beyond these headline numbers, the story becomes more nuanced. Despite its size, India's per capita income is still quite low, and its Human Development Index places it in the lower middle range worldwide. This means that while India is a giant in terms of numbers, the quality of life for the average citizen remains far behind that of advanced economies. In this video, we'll break down India's global status, why it feels more like a consumer than a producer, and what this means for its future. India's economic size has grown rapidly. In 2013, it was the 10th largest economy. By 2024-25, it's the fourth largest by nominal GDP and third by purchasing power parity. The population stands at about 1.43 billion, making it the largest in the world. However, per capita GDP is only around 2,803,000, placing India in the lower middle income group. This is far below countries like China or many in Latin America. The Human Development Index at 0.685 ranks India 130th out of 193 countries. So while India is a top 5 economy by size, it's still in the bottom third globally for per-person well-being. India's economy is dominated by services, which make up about 55% of GDP. Industry accounts for 27%, but manufacturing is only 14%. Agriculture, once the backbone, is now 18%. This is very different from export powerhouses like China, where manufacturing is 25–30% of GDP. India's growth has been led by domestic demand and services jobs, think IT, finance, retail, and logistics. But the country still lacks a globally competitive manufacturing base. This structure shapes how India interacts with the world and why it's seen more as a consumer market than a producer. India's exports have grown from $466 billion in 2013-14 to $778 billion in 2023-24, but as a share of world trade it's still modest. India's merchandise exports are about $453 billion, while imports are $720 billion, resulting in a large trade deficit. India captures only 1.7% of global imports and less than 10% of the most in-demand product categories. The country imports a lot of crude oil, electronics, gold, and machinery, partially balancing this with services exports like IT and BPO. This trade pattern is a key reason India feels more like a consumer than a producer. India has made real progress in human development. The HDI has risen by 48% since 1990, and multidimensional poverty has fallen sharply. Yet hundreds of millions still lack quality housing, healthcare, and education. The Global Hunger Index ranks India 102nd out of 123, with serious hunger and nutrition challenges. While consumption inequality is relatively low, wealth inequality is extreme, with the top 1–5% holding a huge share of assets. The World Happiness Report places India in the bottom tier, reflecting persistent social and economic divides. India is often described as two countries in one. On one hand, there's the rising, globally integrated India, metros, IT parks, malls, and startups. On the other, there's Bharat, where millions still struggle with jobs, education, healthcare, and basic security. This duality is visible in every aspect of life, from urban skylines to rural villages. It's a country of contrasts, rapid growth and persistent poverty, world-class innovation and basic infrastructure gap. Understanding this duality is key to grasping India's unique position in the world. India's global reputation is shaped by its governance and freedoms. Press freedom has declined, with India dropping from 140th to 159th out of 180 countries in the World Press Freedom Index. Corruption perceptions remain stubbornly high, with little improvement over the past decade. On the Global Peace Index, India ranks in the bottom half but has seen fewer deaths from terrorism and insurgency. Hard power, military and economic strength is rising, but soft power is held back by issues like press freedom, communal tensions, and visible poverty. India's economic growth is driven mainly by consumption, not exports. Private consumption accounts for about 60–65% of GDP, compared to just 39% in China. This means household spending on food, housing, education, travel, and digital services fuels the economy. In contrast, countries like China, Korea, and Germany grew by producing and exporting goods. India's investment and government spending are lower as a share of GDP, so the structure itself is tilted toward consumption. This is a core reason India feels like a consumer nation. Manufacturing in India has been stuck at around 14–16% of GDP for years, while services have soared above 54%. Many goods Indians buy, electronics, machinery, chemicals, are imported or rely heavily on imports. Several factors hold back manufacturing: late reforms, complex regulations, infrastructure gaps, small and informal factories, skill and technology deficits, and inconsistent policy. As a result, India imports much of what it consumes, reinforcing the image of a consumer market for foreign producers. With 1.4 billion people and a fast-growing middle class, India is a magnet for global brands. Companies see India as the next big consumption market for smartphones, electronics, autos, luxury goods, streaming, and fintech. Policies like UPI and cheap mobile data have boosted digital consumption, making online shopping, gaming, and OTT services mainstream. This creates the image of India as a massive bazaar, where both domestic and foreign companies focus on selling to Indian consumers rather than exporting to the world. India's export strengths lie in IT, BPO, professional services, pharmaceuticals, specialty chemicals, and some auto parts and textiles. But in mass manufacturing, smartphones, semiconductors, consumer electronics, machinery, solar panels, India is still a net importer. The country produces a lot of invisible services exports, which aren't always visible in daily life. Meanwhile, everyday products in the market often come from abroad, reinforcing the sense that India buys more than it sells globally. Subtle but important factor is the gap between low per capita incomes and high aspirations, especially among India's youth. Access to credit, through EMIs, credit cards, and microfinance, lets households consume today and pay later. Aggressive marketing by e-commerce influencers and big brands creates constant pressure to buy. But productivity and wages in many sectors aren't keeping up, so people often feel they're consuming more without becoming stronger producers. This fuels the sense of being a consumer nation. Sum up, India is big and fast growing, a top 5 economy, one in population and growing at nearly 7% when the world averages 2-3%. But it's still relatively poor with low per capita income and HDI. The economy is consumption heavy and manufacturing light, with 60-65% of GDP from consumption and only 14-16% from manufacturing. India is a net consumer in trade, with imports exceeding exports and a small share of global trade. Social and institutional challenges remain, but there's strong potential for change if reforms are implemented well. Despite its challenges, India has significant potential. The demographic dividend, a large pool of tech talent, growing infrastructure, and policy focus on manufacturing like the Make in India and PLI schemes, could gradually shift India from a consumer-first to a producer-plus-consumer economy. New labor codes and infrastructure investments are steps in the right direction. If these reforms are implemented effectively, India could become not just a giant market but a global production powerhouse as well. India stands at a crossroads. The world is watching to see if it can transform its vast market and youthful population into a true engine of production and innovation. The journey from consumer to producer will require sustained reforms, investment in skills and technology, and a focus on inclusive growth. If India can bridge its internal divides and unlock its full potential, it could redefine its role in the global economy, not just as a giant market, but as a leader in production, innovation, and prosperity.